From our studios in Tokyo, this is NHK Newsline. I'm Ross Mihara. We begin the hour with the U.S.-North Korea summit. President Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un have wrapped up their first day of talks in Vietnam. The world is watching and waiting to see if any progress will be made between the two leaders on denuclearization. This is their second summit following last year's meeting in Singapore.
지난 싱가포르 6월에 싱가포르에서 만났을 때부터 지금까지 꼭 261일 만에 카타르를 만나게 됩니다. 또다시 좀 훌륭한 상봉이 마련되게 된 건 각하의 그 남다른 통큰 정치적 결단이 안한 일이라고 생각합니다. 그 261일 동안 그 사이 보면 사방에 불신과 오해 있는 소리들도 있고 그 적대적인 낡은 관행이 우리가 가는 길을 막으려고 했지만 우리는 그것들을 다 빼돌리고 극복하고 해서 다시 마주 걸어서 261일 만에 여기 하노이까지 걸어왔습니다. 그 기간이 때문에 생각해보면 좀 어느 때보다도 많은 그 고민과 노력 그리고 그 인내가 필요했던 그런 기간이었던 것 같습니다. 그래서 우리는 오늘 여기서 이렇게 같이 만났습니다. 이번에 보다 더 모든 사람들이 반기는 그런 훌륭한 결과가 만들어질 거라고 확신하고 또 그렇게 되기 위해서 최선을 다하겠습니다.
It's great to be with you. We had a very successful first summit. I felt it was very successful. And some people would like to see it go quicker. I'm satisfied, you're satisfied. We want to be happy with what we're doing. But I thought the first summit was a great success, and I think this one hopefully will be equal or greater than the first. And we made a lot of progress, and I think the biggest progress was our relationship. And as I've said many times, and I say it to the press, I say it to anybody that wants to listen, I think that your country has tremendous economic potential, unbelievable, unlimited. And I think that you will have a tremendous future with your country, a great leader. And I look forward to watching it happen and helping it to happen. And we will help it to happen.
After the one-on-one talks, the leaders dined together with their aides. They will meet again on Thursday, with the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula at the top of the agenda. Trump is expected to urge Kim to take concrete steps, such as dismantling nuclear facilities in Yongbyon. Before the first summit, the U.S. was calling for complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization. But coming into round two, Trump said there's no rush, as long as there's no testing. It's believed Kim will call on Trump to ease economic sanctions against Pyongyang. Trump says there will be a news conference at some point during the day. The summit is being closely watched across the region, including here in Japan. Earlier on Wednesday, Japan's top diplomats stressed that Tokyo remains united with the U.S. on how to deal with North Korea.
Japan takes a standpoint that economic sanctions on North Korea will not be lifted without complete, verifiable, and irreversible abolition of the country's nuclear weapons and missiles. This stance is exactly the same as the U.S.
Kono also noted that U.S. President Trump has acknowledged the importance of Japan's abduction issue. Japan's government says at least 17 citizens were abducted by North Korea. 5 returned in 2002, but the other 12 remain unaccounted for. Families of abductees also hope that the summit meeting will produce a solution. Kenichi Ichikawa's younger brother Shuichi has been missing for over 4 decades.
I hope the U.S.-North Korea summit will yield some clue as to how to solve the problem. I can only wait for a breakthrough to come someday.
Ichikawa said he wants President Trump to convey Japan's wish to Kim. Earlier, James Tengan spoke with NHK World's Mami Mochizuki and Kengo Okamoto in Hanoi for more details.
Let's start with you, Mami. What's been your impression of the day so far?
Well, one thing that stood out to me is Trump's messaging around the summit. He keeps hammering home the idea about how North Korea's economic development could be like Vietnam's. In tweets, he said the potential for that to happen is awesome and that the North could become an economic powerhouse. And at the top of the meeting with Kim, as we saw earlier, Trump reiterated the same message. Also, when Trump met with the Vietnamese president, he said, "You're an example of what can happen with good thinking." So Trump is sending a clear message, and it seems to align with his business-focused worldview. The question is, how receptive is Kim to that message? Another thought, I'm wondering how focused Trump is on the task at hand here. He was tweeting about jobs in Michigan, a Democratic senator, and his former lawyer, Michael Cohen. Experts have said Trump is looking for a win here in Hanoi to distract from domestic problems back at home. But I wonder if it's the president who might be distracted by Cohen's testimony to Congress on Wednesday. With Trump under pressure to walk out of this big summit with something tangible, some experts say he might offer some concessions to move negotiations forward. Maybe there's movement toward declaring an end to the Korean War or a permission for humanitarian aid workers to enter the North, or some other economic incentive. We'll get a better sense of that tomorrow.
Let's turn now to Kengo. What's going through your mind as you see the initial images of the leaders meeting?
Yes, James. I thought their first encounter here in Vietnam looked similar to the one we saw last year in Singapore. But one thing stood out to me. Both leaders appeared in front of the media and allowed relatively open coverage of their initial remarks. For the North Korean leader, that's really unusual. And I think he wants to demonstrate that he's a typical world leader who can negotiate with the U.S. on equal footing. Turning to the overall picture in the summit, I think expectations are high. There's hope that the denuclearization process will get back on track and for an improved relationship between both sides. Last year's summit was historic and full of symbolism, but it was just a starting point for negotiations. And it's been a bumpy road since then. The leaders entrusted their ace, Mike Pompeo and Kim Yong-chol, to get work done on the Singapore promises. But it doesn't seem like they got very far. North Korea's foreign ministry once compared Pompeo to a gangster. And American officials have said they don't think Kim is going to give up all of his weapons or programs. So now the ball is back in the leaders' court. We spoke to an expert on North Korean politics who spelled out how important this meeting could be for Kim.
With the upcoming summit, Chairman Kim Jong-un is putting his regime and his fate at risk. It doesn't look like he has visited any firms or factories this year, even though he has repeatedly stressed how crucial it is to develop the North's economy. I think Kim has probably been concentrating on diplomacy and his relationship with the U.S.
So Kim may be ready to make some concessions in order to boost the North's economy and security. Maybe he'll offer to dismantle some missile tests and launch sites, or the Yeonbyeong nuclear facility that has produced fuel for nuclear weapons. Maybe he'll even allow some foreign inspectors in to verify that process. But there's one concession I don't think he'll offer, and that's handing over an inventory of his nuclear facilities, programs, and weapons. Pyongyang believes that's basically like handing over a target list to the U.S. Kim is rightfully fully aware that although both sides are currently talking, the relationship could quickly sour once again.
The two leaders met again face to face. What were your impressions?
Well, two things struck me. One is that how cautious Kim was. I mean, he looked even nervous sometimes, and maybe that's because that he tried to sort of gauge how the Trump was responding to what he said, or whatever. And the second is that while Kim Jong-un talked about the difficulties on the path towards the second summit meeting, Trump didn't say anything about that. So that seems to indicate that North Korea was really sort of dragging its feet before actually agreeing to the second summit.
The summit comes as Trump deals with a host of problems back home. How do you think that could influence what happens in Vietnam?
Right. I mean, definitely it weakens the U.S. negotiation position, of course. And well, President Trump has a lot of domestic problems, such as Russia investigation and turmoil concerning the emergency declaration about the border wall. And Trump's approval rating is now really going really low. So he's coming to the meeting sort of from the position of the weakness, and as many people point out, that this is some place where he needs to show some kind of achievement, and we are hoping that that will not motivate him to make unnecessary concessions towards North Korea.
Trump came into the summit saying he's in no rush for the North to denuclearize as long as there is no testing. What impact do you think that will have on the talks?
Mm-hmm. Well, very few people would expect that the North Korea's denuclearization will happen like on the spot. So, I mean, it's not too difficult to imagine that it's going to take some time. What's more important here is that the fact that he actually had to say it in public before the negotiation occurs. And of course, I mean, it weakens the U.S. starting position, but the fact that he actually said it is the indication that this negotiation, it's going to be very difficult for the U.S.
Professor, what do you think the most likely outcome of the summit will be?
Mm-hmm. Logically thinking, North Korea and United States would look for some kind of a least common denominator. They may agree on the limited inspection of North Korean facilities in exchange for humanitarian aid, or even the opening of the U.S. liaison office in Pyongyang. Or they might actually just agree on holding the third summit without any concrete progress. So we'll see what's going to happen tomorrow.